Another powerful concept that Illustrator has but Affinity won't offer you to that extent are knockouts. So let's first start with an object, and I'm going to apply a thick stroke but no fill. And then let's add another stroke to this, and I'm going to first make that orange and make it thinner. And now I'm going to apply an effect to that. Let's apply the zigzag effect, and then we can set the opacity of this to 0, and we can define this whole thing as a knockout group. And then we can see through this. The stroke punches through that other stroke. You can see that now that I'm moving it over that object with a gradient. And the whole thing even works with multiple objects. So if I'm going to select these all and set the opacity of their white fills to 0, and then group this and set this group to knockout group, then you see it punches through. And I can move that around on that background, and the background will always be precisely what I want it to be. And still I can move these around and the whole thing adapts to that. So this is pretty powerful. You can do that with a lot of things. Let's take a look at this in Affinity. We're going to start with the ellipse, and I'm going to set that fill to none, and let's take the appearance panel and increase that stroke weight. And now I'm going to add another stroke here, and let's have this first red and make it a little thicker. Now what I cannot do is apply a zigzag effect just to that red stroke, but we can go ahead and set this to erase. So now it's punching through, and I'm going to move this over the gradient, and you see it punches. We need to look at that again in another step, because as you might guess, it's a blend mode, and blend modes usually, when you expand them, then they will be pixels. So we're going to take a look at that. But then again, if we take a look at these circles with that fill that punches, that fill that is set to erase, that is something that we cannot do in Affinity, because we cannot do that grouping trick. So nothing happens when I group that, and I do not have a chance to set that to a knockout group. Now let's take a look at what happens when I export this as an EPS, because in an EPS it should be converted to paths if possible. So let's export that, and let's select EPS here and just export that. And now I'm going to open this EPS in Affinity, and here we've got the result. But you see, it has been turned into an image. There's no chance to get paths from that knockout. And of course, that's bad, because it's no longer vector. And this is not a requirement because everything needs to be vector, because it needs to be vector. But if it will not be converted to paths, then you cannot use these paths in order to send them to a plotter and get something for your window. So that's pretty bad when designing logos, which is a core task when doing vector graphics.